The forest smelled of ancient rain and rotten wood. The lights of the house flickered as if they had a memory of their own. Alice stopped the car, turned everything off, and stared at me in silence, like someone training silence to obey her breathing. She whispered, and it was the first time I obeyed without arguing. The door opened. Before we knocked, the man in the suit, tall, black, heavy gaze. My brother smiled with a rehearsed sadness. "Welcome back, sister." I did not remember his eyes like that, and yet, he hugged her as if they had been separated for centuries. Watched, silent. She trembled slightly. We entered the house. The smell of wood and dust mixed with memories I had buried. The walls seemed to sigh. The corridor stretched like a spine full of secrets. Alice walked ahead, guiding us as if she knew the way. The man in the suit followed, silent as a shadow. I counted the steps. Each one echoed inside my head. At the end of the corridor, a door half open. A breath came from there like wind through dry leaves. Alice pushed the door slowly. The room was dark, lit only by a single candle. A figure sat in the corner, almost sculpted in shadow. It was him, my father, alive. My throat closed. I had buried him in my memory, in my anger. He looked at me. His eyes were the same, and yet different. Alice ran to him, knelt by his side. He touched her face as if memorizing her. I did not move. The man in the suit stood by the door, watching. Silence grew thick. Finally, my father spoke. His voice cracked like old wood. "You came back." Not a question, a fact. I nodded slowly. Alice held his hand tight, as if afraid he would disappear. He coughed. A dry, deep sound. "You must listen," he said. "There is little time." The candle flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. Father's face seemed carved by years of absence. Alice's eyes shone with tears. I felt mine burn. The man in the suit shifted slightly, impatient. My father looked at him. "Not yet," he said softly. The man nodded, returned to stillness. I wanted to speak, to ask, to scream, but the words stuck. My father's gaze held me. "You were right," he said. "About her, about the betrayal." Alice stiffened. "She had no choice," my father continued. "They forced her." My mind spun. Betrayal, choice, force. I wanted explanations, names, faces, but he coughed again, harsher this time. Alice held him, whispered something I could not hear. His eyes closed for a moment. The candlelight trembled. Then he opened them, sharp, clear. "They are coming," he said, "for all of us." The man in the suit tensed. Alice turned pale. I felt the weight of his words settle on my chest. "Who?" I asked, voice breaking. He looked at me, then at the man, then back. "The council," he whispered. The word crawled through the air, cold and heavy. Alice bit her lip. The man in the suit finally spoke. "They are closer than you think." His voice was deep, carrying something final. I felt the floor beneath me tilt. The council. The name alone carried fear. My father tried to sit up, failed. Alice helped him, tears running freely now. "We must leave," the man said. "Now." My father shook his head slowly. "No, not yet." "She must know." He pointed at me, his hand trembling. Alice looked at me, eyes wide, pleading. I stepped closer. The candle between us burned low. My father's hand found mine, cold, weak, desperate. "You must find the book," he said. "A book of..." "Course, always a book." "Before they do," he added. The man in the suit growled softly. "We are out of time." My father's eyes locked on mine. "Promise me," he said. I nodded before thinking. He sighed. A long, shivering breath. The walls seemed to lean in. Outside, a wind rose, rattling the windows. The council was coming, and we were not ready. The man in the suit moved toward the window. He looked out, scanning the darkness. Alice clutched my father's arm. "We have to go," she whispered. My father shook his head. "Not yet." I felt torn in half. The council, the book, secrets that tasted of iron. The man turned from the window. "They are here." I froze. Alice's breath caught. My father closed, his eyes as if listening to something beyond the walls. Then he opened them, fierce. "Take her," he said, nodding toward me. "Get her out." Alice hesitated. "But now!" His voice cracked like thunder. The man grabbed my arm before I could protest. Alice followed, glancing back at our father. He watched us go, a shadow of pride on his tired face. The corridor seemed longer on the way out. Each step was a countdown. Outside, the air was cold, biting. The man pushed me toward the car. Alice slid into the driver's seat, hands shaking. "Where are we going?" I asked. "The cabin," she said. "In the mountains." The man nodded. "They won't find us there." Not immediately. I wanted answers. But the engine roared, drowning my words. The house disappeared behind us, swallowed by night. I looked back once. A single candle still burned in the window, like a heartbeat. The road twisted through the forest. Shadows leapt between the trees. Alice drove like a hunted animal. The man sat beside her, silent, a statue with eyes. I hugged myself, trying to hold in the fear. Finally, I spoke. "What is the book?" Alice's grip tightened on the wheel. "It holds the names," she said. "Names?" My voice cracked. "Of everyone," she whispered. "Council members, allies, traitors." The man added, "It is power. Whoever holds it controls the game." The game, as if lives were pieces on a board. I felt sick. "And my father?" I asked. "Why did he stay?" Alice's eyes glistened in the dark. "He has his reasons." The man's jaw clenched. "He won't survive if they find him." The words hit like cold water. Silence filled the car. The forest thinned as we climbed. Stars appeared, cold and distant. Alice's face was pale in their light. The man checked the mirror constantly. I tried not to look back. Every shadow felt alive. Finally, lights ahead, a cabin, small, hunched against the wind. Alice stopped the car hard. "We stay here," she said, "until we know more." The man stepped out first, scanning the trees. Then he nodded. "Clear. For now." I followed Alice inside. The cabin smelled of dust and pine. A fireplace waited cold and empty. Alice lit a lamp. Its glow pushed back the dark. I sat, trembling. The man locked the door, checked the windows. Alice found a blanket, wrapped it around me. Her hands shook. "We need to talk," she said. The man leaned against the wall. "Arms crossed. The council won't stop," he said. "Not until they have the book. And kill us," Alice added softly. My breath caught. "Why us?" I asked. Alice looked at me for a long time. "Because of who we are," she said finally. Her words sank like stones. The man nodded. "Bloodlines matter. Old promises. Older debts." I stared at them both. I didn't ask for this. Alice's smile was bitter. Neither did I. The lamp flickered. Outside wind scraped the walls. The man said, "We move at first light." Alice nodded reluctantly. I wanted to ask 1,000 things, but my body ached. My mind burned. Alice squeezed my shoulder. "Rest. We'll need our strength." I lay on a narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. Sleep came slow, heavy. Dreams came faster. Dark, Corridors, whispering voices, a book with a lock of bone, and eyes, always eyes, watching. I woke to silence. The lamp was out. The cabin cold. Alice slept in a chair, arms wrapped around herself. The man was gone. Panic rose like fire. I shook Alice awake. She gasped, looking around. "Where?" The door creaked. The man entered, breath white in the cold air. "They found the house," he said simply. My chest tightened. "My father." He shook his head once. "No." Alice covered her mouth, eyes wide with grief. The man dropped something on the table, a torn piece of cloth. Dark with blood. I turned away, stomach twisting. Alice touched it with trembling fingers. "They killed him," she whispered. The man didn't answer. The wind outside howled like a grieving thing. I felt hollow. The council was real, deadly, close. Alice wiped her eyes roughly. "We find the book," she said. "Before they do?" The man nodded. At dawn. The rest of the night crawled. Every sound felt like footsteps, every shadow like eyes. When morning came, gray and bitter, we left the cabin. The man led, silent, a rifle on his back. Alice followed, jaw tight. I trailed them both, heart pounding. The forest swallowed us. We moved single file, breath steaming, boots sinking into cold earth. The trees pressed in like listening giants. The man in the suit led us along a path that looked like a scar through the moss. Alice walked behind him, jaw set, eyes red but dry. Followed their rhythm and tried to forget the sound of a candle dying in a window. We spoke only with glances. When birds startled, all three of us froze. When branches creaked, the man's hand went to the rifle without looking down. We crossed a bone-white stream. The water sounded like torn paper. Alice touched my sleeve. A small pressure that meant keep up. The forest let us go only when it wanted. At the ridge, we saw the valley, a long bowl of fog. In the middle, a cracked road and the spine of an abandoned railway. The man pointed with 2 fingers. "There." Alice nodded once. We descended in a zigzag, careful not to send rocks down like signals. At the bottom, the world smelled of metal and rain. The station was only a brick shell. Windows like empty sockets, a clock with no hands. The man tested the door, then took us around back. A wooden panel lifted, a stare into dark ribs. He went first. Alice gave me a look that meant trust him this far. I followed the damp steps into the old signal room. Dust rose like a slow prayer. He locked us in and lit a small lamp. The room was no bigger than a confession. Alice leaned on the table and exhaled for the first time since dawn. I couldn't feel my fingers. The man set the lamp down and finally said, "My name is Victor." Alice flinched because names were a luxury. He met my eyes. "You deserve one truth. And a plan." I waited. Victor removed his gloves with the care of someone defusing something. "The book is not a book," he said. "It is a ledger, written in 2 inks, one for what is done, one for what is promised." Alice looked at the floor. I felt the old floor tilt again beneath my shoes. "Your father protected half of it," Victor said. "He hid that half in places only his blood can open." My mouth dried. "Blood?" Alice said quietly. "It reacts." Victor reached into his coat and took out a small case. Inside, wrapped in linen, a piece of bone, polished and carved. A lock, but not for any door I knew. It had grooves that made my skin crawl when the lamplight moved across them. Victor placed it on the table. "It chooses," he said. I didn't touch it. Alice did. The bone warmed under her fingers, the grooves filled with a faint red glow like sleeping embers. Victor watched the light. "He split the ledger," he said. "Pages bound to different locks. Different heirs." I looked at my hands. at the thin crescent scar on my left palm, at the memory of a game our father had taught us. Find the hollow behind the obvious. Alice withdrew her hand. The glow faded. Where is the first half? I asked. In a place made to be forgotten, Victor said. An archive that outlived its purpose and learned to keep secrets. Alice whispered the word like a superstition. The repository. Victor nodded. My throat tightened around a dozen questions. One crawled out. Why didn't he tell us? Victor did not answer immediately. He took the bone piece back, the way you take back a name. Because the council listens in ways you can't see, he said. Because silence was the last shield he could afford. Silence hurt more than noise. Alice touched the table with 2 fingers, a habit from when we were children and counting meant control. How far is it? She asked. Far enough to make mistakes, Victor said. Close enough to die on the way. I swallowed the taste of iron. Victor blew out the lamp and we moved again. The tunnel welcomed us, because tunnels believe in destinations. We walked, until my legs hummed. Rust fell like brown snow when trains that would never come moaned in their sleep. At a grate, Victor crouched and listened with his teeth. Then he nodded and pushed. We emerged into the skeleton of the station. Fog lay on the tracks like a careful lie. Stay low, Victor said. We moved parallel to shadows. At the old water tower, he stopped and raised one hand. I heard it then. Not a sound. The absence of birds, the way fog holds breath. We all looked up at the same moment. On the ridge, 3 figures cut out of the morning. They didn't hurry. They didn't need to. Alice's hand found mine, a squeeze that meant forgive me in case. Victor didn't raise the rifle. He measured distance, wind, pride. Keep moving, he said. We kept moving. When the first shot came, it arrived without a sound, and then offered one. A sign shattered by my head. I tasted wood and dust. We ran bent into ourselves. Victor fired once, twice, not to hit, but to fold space. Alice never looked back. I did. That's why the others missed, down on the track. Moving like someone who had rehearsed gravity. He wore no insignia. His coat was too clean. He watched us not like prey, but like a problem. He lifted his hand and made a small gesture. A pleasure you grant to a trained animal that did something well. Victor pulled us under the tower. Metal sighed. Alice swore softly, a habit she had taught herself not to show. We won't outrun them, she said. We don't need to outrun them, Victor said. We need to change the terrain. He pointed at the drainage ditch. We slid into cold mud and became part of the station's forgotten plumbing. The ditch carried us under a concrete slab. We crawled along its throat until we reached a grate that had no intention of opening. Victor did not fight it. He showed it the bone lock. The grate shuddered, surprised by recognition, and let us through. We dropped into a service tunnel that did not exist on any map. I listened for steps above. I heard only the station thinking. We walked in a half-crouch. Alice's breath counted. Victor's steps apologized. To the dark. At a junction, he stopped. He traced a circle in the dust with the bone lock. The dust didn't dare settle back where he had moved it. He looked at me. Give me your hand. He did not ask. He had the right. I gave it. He pricked my palm with a pin so clean it did not feel like pain until I saw the drop. He touched the bone to my blood. It woke. Light ran along the grooves as if it had been waiting for a reason. Victor pressed it into a seam in the wall. The tunnel sighed, stone unlocked like breath. Narrow door swung open to a room that smelled of old paper and colder intent. The repository began here and ended where fear becomes architecture. Shelves rose like forests. Books stood with the dignity of gravestones. The air hummed with names. Alice took one step and stopped. Overcome. Victor kept his eyes on the aisles as if they were rivers that might drown you if you stared. "We have 10 minutes, he said. "Maybe less." "How do we find it?" I asked. "You don't," a voice said. We turned as one. An old woman stood between shelves, small, straight, unafraid. She wore a key on a ribbon around her neck. The ribbon was not for decoration, either. "It finds you, or you die wanting," she said. Alice's eyes widened. "Keeper," she whispered. The old woman inclined her head the way mountains nod to storms. "Your father paid his debts," she said to Alice. "Not all with coin." My throat closed around a name I did not know how to speak. Victor lowered the rifle an inch. "We are being hunted," he said. "We are all being hunted," the keeper said. "That is why this place still bothers to exist." She looked at me, and whatever she saw made her sigh as if 3 decisions got heavier at once. "Give me your hand," she said. I offered it. She didn't flinch at the blood. She touched the eye, bone lock, then my palm, then the air between us as if drawing a door. The shelves around us whispered. Paper rubbed paper, like snakes learning to pray. A thin ledger slid from the stack as if pulled by a thread of light. It hit the table with the weight of a sentence. "This is not the half you want," the keeper said. "It is the half you deserve." Alice reached but did not touch. Victor listened to the tunnel beyond the wall. "We have no time for riddles," he said. "The council has even less," the keeper replied. She opened the ledger to the middle. 2 inks, just as Victor had said. Names written as if by 2 different hands living in one body. I felt heat in my throat. One page bled at the edges where a name had been added over another. The keeper watched my face. "You recognize the hand?" she said. I did. Father's steady script, and another hand that mirrored it badly. "With hunger." The council's scribe. The ledger's letters lifted like scales. I saw lines that were not lines. Roots. Debts. Dates that matched losses we had called accidents. My anger rose like a tide. Alice closed her eyes because rage was a language. We had never learned to share without breaking things we needed. Victor said quietly, "We take it. We burn the path behind us. And then we run until there is no word for running." The keeper closed the ledger. "You will not take it," she said. Victor's jaw jumped. You came here to choose," the keeper said. "Not to steal." She turned the ledger and pushed it toward me an inch, which was the same as handing me a universe. "The book will walk with the one who can carry both inks without drowning," she said. "Whoever that is will not be forgiven." Alice waited, breath held between 2 futures. Victor waited, finger along the rifle as if reminding himself that bullets and vows travel differently. I placed my hand on the cover. It was colder than the tunnel. It warmed like the bone when it swallowed. My pulse. I heard the station above us remember trains. I heard my father say my name the way only he could say it, as if it came with a map. The ledger opened under my palm. A page turned itself. A name rose. My own. Written once in the pale ink, once in the dark. The keeper nodded, as if a long-bet coin had finally fallen. Victor exhaled a curse that sounded like a prayer in a different grammar. Alice touched my shoulder. "I didn't know," she whispered. Neither did I. Footsteps. Not imagined. Not ours. The tunnel woke with hunger. The keeper's face hardened into something older than her bones. "Choose." "Now," she said. "Stay and be counted, or run and be hunted." I lifted the ledger. It was heavier than truth. Victor took the lamp, took my free hand. We moved. The wall closed behind us like an eyelid that had seen enough. We ran through the seam of 2 worlds. The tunnel accepted our choice. We threw ourselves into a narrow shaft that trusted us not to look down. Ladder carried us into a mouthful of light. We came up under a collapsed platform. Victor checked the wind and chose left. The station moaned. We sprinted along the old track until the fog leaned into us like an accomplice. Behind, voices. Measured, even, not. Tired. Victor handed me the rifle without letting go of it. Last lesson, he said. When they stop shooting, they're already in front of you. We veered off the track and into thorn. It tore at our coats, which was good. Blood smells like declarations and lies. Alice stumbled. I caught her. Victor turned and fired once into the fog. Not to hit, to teach the air to jump. We broke into a clearing where the forest remembered fire. Charred trunks rose like black teeth. In the middle stood a low stone marker without a name. The bone lock in Victor's pocket began to hum. Like a trapped bee, he took it out. It glowed with a patient, hungry light. The marker had a seam you could only see if you were already guilty. Victor pressed the bone to that seam. Stone surrendered. A cold breath climbed the steps beneath, as if the earth exhaled what it could no longer keep. Down, he said. We obeyed. The door sealed above us with the sound of a secret erasing its own footprints. For a moment we let the dark listen to us. Then we moved again. This tunnel had been cut by hands that believed in precision. The walls were smooth, the bow. Corners were arguments with gravity that had been won a long time ago. Names were carved along the way at the height of a human breath. I did not read them. The ledger in my hands felt heavier with each step, as if each name shifted inside it to make room for the next. Ahead, a thin hum. At first, I thought it was electricity. Then I heard water under it, and underwater a note held too long by a patient mouth. Victor raised a hand. We slowed. Alice's fingers found my sleeve and stayed there. The corridor opened into a chamber of machines that looked assembled from memory and faith. Cables ran like veins across the floor. Old gauges watched us with cracked glass eyes. In the middle, sitting on a crate as if he had always been there, was the musician. He was thinner. He had the tired posture of someone who had learned to carry endings without spilling them. But his eyes were the same, alive, dangerous in a gentle way. He looked at the ledger, then at me, then at Alice. You're late, he said. Victor barred the door with a metal rod that didn't look strong enough to matter. They're close, he said. They will always be close, the musician replied, and the way he said it removed the sting without removing the truth. He nodded at the ledger. Open it where it hurts most. I looked at Alice. She nodded. I opened to the place where two inks fought over a single name like weather. The council's mark crossed it at an angle, turning a vow into an invoice. The musician stepped nearer and traced the older ink without touching it. It's a score, he said. Victor frowned. A what? A composition, the musician said softly. Every name is a theme, every debt a rhythm. If you listen, you can conduct more than a room. Alice blinked away tears that had nothing to do with music. And if we listen wrong? She asked. Then we play their song, he said. And they win. The hum deepened. Footsteps passed. Somewhere beyond the wall, already in formation. I felt the ledger warm. The pale ink chilled my palm like snow. The dark ink warmed it like breath. 2 hands, 1 pulse. I spoke the first name on that page out loud. The chamber paused. The footsteps lost half a beat. A pipe in the wall sighed as if relieved to be noticed. Victor's eyes widened a fraction. Again, the musician said. I spoke the second name, then the third, adjusting the space between them the way you adjust space between blows you cannot afford to miss. The corridor outside miscounted itself. A voice hissed an order that arrived 1 syllable. Late, the musician smiled without joy. Good, he said. Now set the refrain. The what? I asked. The thing you want them to remember even when they hate you for it, he said. I looked down at the ledger and found a line that had been written twice in two inks, but meant the same thing, both times. I said it the way my father would have said it if he had known I would be listening now. The floor thrummed. The lights on the old gauges tried to wake and failed. Beyond the wall, boots turned right when they meant to turn left. Victor exhaled through his nose like a man discovering a new rule that favors him. "How long can we do this?" Alice asked. "As long as you can survive the echo," the musician said. "What echo?" I asked. "The one inside you," he said. "Power isn't a tool. It's an agreement you make with what you could become." The ledger cooled, the hum thinned, the footsteps corrected. We were out of borrowed seconds. Victor nodded toward a second door, half hidden behind a rusted cabinet. "Back way?" he asked. The musician shook his head. "No back ways," he said. "Only different fronts." He stood, knees popping. He moved like a man whose body had learned to negotiate with pain and almost won. He lifted a canvas roll from the floor and unwrapped it. Inside, a device that looked like a radio that had married a metronome and kept both last names. He wound it once. It clicked. "Keep speaking their names," he told me. "Not like curses, like coordinates." I did. The device answered with a ticking that laid a grid over the air. Victor eased the metal bar from the door. The corridor beyond was empty, in the loud way. Empty places are when they are about to become crowded. We slipped out. The musician stayed, between me and the open space without making a point of it. He had always done that. Remembered a night on a rooftop when he taught me that fear has a tempo, and sometimes you can outrun it by changing the song. We moved through a throat of concrete that narrowed and widened like a lie. The metronome clicked. I spoke a name. Boots. Stumbled. We turned left. I spoke another. Shadows hesitated. We crossed a bridge made of pipes that believed they were bridges. Below, a black reservoir caught the weak light and refused to return it. "To the ladder," Victor said. We climbed into air that tasted like rain turned to ash. A hatch opened into the skeleton of a warehouse. Windows were missing. Birds had made a parliament in the rafters and left no speakers behind. Victor checked the horizon. Fog had learned patience. "Truck," he said, pointing. There was a shape of a truck under a tarp that tried too hard to be unnoticed. We ran. The metronome kept time with something older than caution. I spoke two names in the space of one breath. The fog nearest us curled, as if reconsidering which way to fall. Alice reached the truck first and tore the tarp loose. It was old. It was reliable in the way machines get, when all their lies are used up. Victor slid behind the wheel. The musician threw himself and his device into the back. I clutched the ledger and jumped after him. Alice slammed the door. The engine coughed, considered its options, and chose violence. We lurched forward. Behind us, figures stepped from the fog like conclusions. They did not hurry. They aimed. The first bullet hit the tarp that still dragged from the bed and made a fist in the fabric. The second sparked on the tailgate and went somewhere to argue with a wall. Spoke three names fast, the third like a held breath. The road bent by a degree it had not intended. A shot went wide for reasons it would never explain. Victor drove like a man who had forgotten how to hesitate. Alice kept her eyes on the rear window and said nothing, which is a kind of courage. The musician curled one hand around the metronome and the other around the side of the truck bed and met my gaze. "Don't lead them," he said. "Invite them into the wrong room." "How?" I asked. "Give them the door they want," he said. "Then lock it from the outside." I looked down. The ledger showed a margin note in my father's smaller hand. It was a key disguised as an apology. I whispered it. The fog ahead parted like a curtain someone had given up holding. We plunged into a lane lined with birches that were not on any map. The metronome clicked the way a heart clicks when it decides to survive one more minute. Something closed behind us. not a door. A choice. The road narrowed. We burst out at the edge of the river, where a ferry landing waited for a ferry that had retired without notice. Victor killed the engine. Silence arrived. Smoking. The river moved with the arrogance of ancient water. The musician set the metronome on the rail and wound it twice. He listened to the ticks and nodded as if the numbers had told him a joke with a moral. "They'll still come," Alice said. "They always do," he said. "Then we run again," Victor said. "Not yet," I said. They looked at me. I opened the ledger to the first page, ran my finger along the pale ink, and then along the dark. I spoke our family name in both voices at once inside my head, and in neither outside my mouth. The river answered with a change of mood. The current leaned toward the far shore as if a hand, under the surface, had decided on a new plan. "You can do that now," Dan the musician said, soft with awe and warning. "I don't know what I can do," I said. "That's the dangerous part," he said. We listened. The fog on the road thickened. Figures formed and dissolved in it, unsure. The metronome slowed a fraction. The device was running out of patience. "We have to move," Victor said. "We will," I said, "but not forward." I turned a page. There was a place I had passed 3 times and only now understood. I spoke it. The ground under the truck shifted as if the earth remembered a branch road buried under silt and shame. We rolled backward without starting the engine. The river laughed in its sleep. The fog on the road sighed and leaned into its own confusion. We slid into a hollow lined with broken pilings. There was a tunnel mouth there, bricked up, initials carved on the lintel by hands that had not believed in permanence. The bone lock warmed through Victor's coat without being asked. He pulled it free. It woke fully when it tasted the stale air. He pressed it to the brick. Mortar, that had sworn to keep its promises, gave up with a small sound. The dark beyond smelled like iron and paper. Victor looked at me. "Your call," he said. I looked at Alice. She nodded once, as if this was the only road we had left and also the one we had always been meant to take. We pushed the truck by hand into the mouth and let the dark take the weight. Inside, the sound of the world muffled. The metronome ticked louder for a few breaths, then steadied. We stopped when the rear bumper kissed old stone. We stood and let our eyes learn a new alphabet of shadow. "Light?" Victor asked. "No light," the musician said. "Let them chase their own." We waited. Boots reached the landing above. Orders slipped through the fog and fell apart. I laid my palm flat on the ledger. I did not speak. I listened. The pale ink told me what had been promised. The dark ink told me what had been taken. Between them there was a third line I had not seen before, thin as hair, stubborn as winter. It did not describe, it asked. "What?" Alice whispered. "Price," I said. Victor swore because he hated fair trades. The musician nodded because he understood songs always ask for something back. "What does it want?" Alice asked. "Something we can't afford," I said. "And something we can't keep. Say it plain," Victor said. "Time," I said. "Not hours, hours together." The tunnel breathed in. The metronome faltered. The footsteps at the landing decided on us. The first figure stepped onto the ramp. I closed the ledger. The air snapped like a taut string. We moved without speaking. Victor took the right wall. Alice took my sleeve. The musician took the metronome and set it in his pocket like a second heart. We went deeper. The tunnel bent. A door waited where no door had any business waiting. There was no lock, only a space the shape of a promise. I put my hand there. It fit. The door opened to a room where the dark had learned how to be clean. In the center stood a table, and on the table a map drawn on glass. Lines crossed lines. Names hummed faintly under the surface like fish beneath ice. The ledger warmed until I felt my pulse in its spine. "This is where they tune it," the musician said. This is where they decide which names sing and which names break. Alice's jaw set. Then change the key, she said. I nodded. I opened the ledger to the page with our name. I put it on the glass. The lines on the map curled like smoke, smelling. Rain. Outside, Boots hurried. Inside, time held still long enough for us to count to 1. Tell me what you want to save, I said. No, Victor said. Tell it who you refuse to lose. I understood the difference. I spoke 2 names. The map flared. Some lines brightened, others thinned to threads you could step over without tripping. The door shuddered. The tunnel shouted back at us with gunmetal. Syllables! Now, Victor said. We lifted the ledger. We ran. The door closed, slow as a law. A bullet took a bite out of the frame and died angry. We hit the ramp. Fog had found its courage and poured in after the men. Shapes moved wrong. They thought we were where we had been. We were already where we were going. Victor reached the truck. The engine chose violence again. We reversed into a dark that accepted us without questions. The ledger lay on my knees. The musician leaned close so only I could hear him. Every command you give it teaches it a little more about you, he said. Be careful what you let it learn. I nodded. I did not promise. The tunnel opened into night 2 miles downriver. We rolled out under a collapsed bridge into tall grass that tried to hide us because it loved lost things. The sky was a low ceiling. The road ahead was a rumor with gravel in it. Alice touched the ledger with the back of her fingers like someone checking a fever. We're not done, she said. We're not started, Victor said. The musician laughed once and then didn't. I looked at the map burned in my head. There were routes we could take. There were names we could call. There were debts we could finally send home. Felt the 3rd line again under my skin, the one that asks, the price would find us. It always does. I closed my eyes and saw my father sit up in a dark room and tell us to run. I opened them to the road. Drive, I said. We did, to be continued. In the next episode,